Breaking right now, outrage over who Google is choosing to honor today on its homepage. You know, www.google.com. Take a look at it here. You see this picture? Nice use of color, right? But it's not the art that's under fire. It is the woman Google is paying tribute to, Yuri Kochiyama, a woman who admired Osama bin Laden, and I quote her here back in 2003 saying, "I consider Osama bin Laden as one of the people that I admire. To me, he is in the category of Malcolm X, Fidel Castro, all leaders that I admire." She went on to say, in another quote, "They all had severe dislike for the U.S. government and those who held power in the U.S. I think all of them felt the U.S. government and its spokesmen were all arrogant, racist, hypocritical, self-righteous, and power-hungry." All right, let's get this straight. Google is paying tribute to her today on what would have been her 95th birthday? Google says she left, quote, "a legacy of advocacy for peace, U.S. political prisoners, and reparations for Japanese Americans interned during the war." Okay, again, I'll just remind everybody, and Google, this is a woman who referred to bin Laden as a freedom fighter. He was fighting for Islam and all people who believe in Islam, she says, against Westerners, especially the U.S. Even when he was fighting against the Russians, "I do not care what the U.S. government or Americans feel. I think it's shameful what this government has done from the beginning of its racist Lotham history." Again, the woman Google wants to admire. You know, we've reached out to Google, but they have yet to respond to us. Louise Mensch, however, from HeatStreet.com is here and is all over this story as well. I mean, my goodness, are they absolutely tone deaf?
There would never, ever be a day on which this was appropriate for Google to honor a woman that praised the killer of thousands of Americans and, by the way, hundreds of Britons. But to do it today, Trish, to do it today, when so many people are suffering from terrorism, when so many people have died, it's almost as though Google are throwing salt in the wounds, adding insult to the terrible injury that people have suffered today. In terrorism.
You know, you think about Google, and certainly we know the political leanings of some of their top leaders there tend to be very much to the left. But this seems to be taking it much too far, Louise. I mean, you know, this is a woman who clearly, but, you know, it's not just Google. I got to point out the Washington Post did a piece on her as well, and it's really quite fawning, and they refer to her as being a great patriot. I mean, I look at those quotes and I say, this woman was anything but that.
A patriot to whom? To Osama bin Laden? When she gave the quote that you read out at the start of this piece, that was 2003. She'd had 2 years to think about the damage that Osama bin Laden did, about his hatred for Americans, about the fact that he was willing and happy to kill innocent men, women, and children. That is not a patriot. A woman that says America is racist and loathsome. And by the way, she loves Fidel Castro and a bunch of other dictators. That's why she loves them. And she gave us a reason. Because they hate America. I love them because they hate America. I'm not sure what your definition of patriotism is. That's not my definition of patriotism.
What does this tell you about Google?
It tells me that they really don't care, that they're willing to put their politics above not just, let's say, our patriotism, but just general compassion. You know, Osama bin Laden was an extremist Muslim terrorist, and all indications from the Egypt Air bombing today, and that's what people think that it is, as we just heard on your show, is that it will also be Islamic terrorism. They just generally have no compassion. They're willing to push their politics, the Washington Post as well, willing to push that level of politics at the expense of people's lives.
But, you know, liberal politics is one thing. Someone who thinks it's okay to kill Americans in the name of Islam.
You know, you would say, hey, maybe you should have Googled her first. Maybe if they used their own product and literally Googled her,
do you think it's
know
but I wondered about this. I thought about that when I first, because it's all over the internet. You can see it pretty quickly. Was it just plain old stupidity? And if so, you know, here we are doing this story right now. Why is it still up?
I think it's genuine stupidity, but the really bad thing is that when the Egypt Air crash happened, nobody at Google said, you know what, a lot of people have died from terrorism, from the kind of terrorism that she was praising. Maybe we should take it down. You know, guys, maybe we could show a little bit of compassion. Google's motto used to be, don't be evil. They seem to have completely lost sight of that in putting this woman on their duty.
But, you know, I think about these tech companies overall right now, and, you know, I think they, instead of helping us in the war against terror, they seem to be aiding and assisting the terrorists because terrorists are using these very platforms to communicate. And, you know, Twitter doesn't do anything to stop it.
I mean, we have already had this week about Facebook suppressing conservative speech. Twitter allows ISIS terrorists to use their servers without let or hindrance at the same time that they're banning conservatives because they make a comment of defending video game players. I mean, it's like the tech companies have completely lost sight of what's good and what's true and what's right for what? For pursuing this very narrow agenda, this America-hating agenda.
Sometimes you feel like you're living in an upside-down world. Alice in Wonderland, here we come. Louise Mensch, thank you.
Thank you, Drew.